The Branding Your Business podcast is for small business owners looking to build a customer favorite brand and a value-driven business. From solo shows covering marketing tactics to experts sharing their brand stories, each episode delivers actionable insights for entrepreneurs who want to impact the world. We're sharing how strategic moves and authentic connections can build a profitable business minus the burnout. Tune into the Branding Your Business podcast with me, Praise Santos McKenna of Come Plum, to design a brand your audience adores while building a life you love. Woo-hoo! This is so exciting. Welcome to the Branding Your Business podcast. I have the joy and honor to be with my friend Bobbi Barbarich today. So I've been fangirling Bobbi for a while now, just because her style of documentary photography and her approach to it will just make your jaw drop. She has built such an incredible brand of noticing things, telling stories in a way that feels natural and insightful. But that's me just fangirling a little bit over Bobbi. Bobbi, can you tell me a little bit more about you and to our audience about what you do and what brings you joy?
Hi, Praise. Thank you for having me. And it's funny when you're saying my brand, that word kind of shocks me. Like, I know what it is, but for so long I resisted branding, and being intentional about it, because I didn't want to be a brand. And then I had this realization. I'm like, wait a minute, what if I'm the brand? And that's what I'm fighting against, right? It's my own kind of internal crap, which we'll probably talk about later. But yeah, thank you for saying that I am a brand and I have a brand, and I appreciate that, because that's been a long road for me. But yeah, I'm a documentary photographer. I shoot weddings and families, and I absolutely love it. I love just being able to sink into a scenario with people and just unabashedly observe them living their lives. Humans are so fascinating, how we express our personalities and our emotions, and just I find it so fulfilling to be able to make images of the stuff that I'm seeing, and then be able to give it to people. It just seems ludicrous to me that this is something that I'm allowed to do.
You are allowed, and the world needs it. So it's a little bit of both.
But yeah, so I've been doing that for 10 or 12 years, whenever I accept that I was calling myself a photographer. And then over the past couple of years, I've started coaching, and I also have a podcast, which is, Praise and I were talking just before this interview started about how much fun it is to do this. So yeah.
Which makes sense, just because I feel like it's another medium for you to notice humans and the human experience, and for you to tell that story, but now through more audio or video, not so much photo. And yeah, it just seems like your calling and what you're wired for is to be this storyteller, which, let's back it up a little bit. I first want to just touch on, you are not my only friend who are like, wait, I have a brand. And I'm like, yes, you have a brand. Doesn't matter if you have accepted it or not, because people are already making associations about you, right? It's what they think, feel, and say about you. So I always joke that you have a brand, whether you intend to or not. Like my dad, my 65-year-old dad living in Florida, retired, has a brand, even if he's not putting intention around it, they associate him with something. So might as well own it, right? And put more intention around it too. So all of that to say, I feel you. And I feel like the battle is real for a lot of people. Secondly, though, you were saying when you also decided to call yourself a photographer was maybe 10 or 12 years ago. Let's back it up, because it seems like you loved it, but you had to dive into it. Can you tell us a little bit about the story of okay, I'm going to start this photography business?
Yes. Which is, when I think about it, the most terrifying thing I had ever done, but also the thing I knew I had to do. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was working as a dietitian I was in academia, and by all analysis, it was a really good job. And I hated every second of it. And I had worked so hard to get my degree and get all my like all the things you have to do in order to call yourself that. And I was like, I hate this. Like, I don't want to do this. And I just decided I was going to move to this. So I had started like kind of dabbling in writing, and because I've always written as well. I have reams of poems from my high school years that I still have. And like certainly
Perfect.
like through university and stuff, like writing short stories and stuff like that. So this has always kind of been in my blood to want to tell stories. And it was also how I processed a lot of stuff, like a lot of the trauma that I had been through. And it was an inadvertent way of trying to heal some of those things. I didn't consciously know that's what I was trying to do, but looking at my work, I'm like, oh yeah, this is how I was processing some really big stuff. And I just had been traveling a little bit, like getting bigger and bigger assignments. And I had been coming to this place I was living in Alberta, and I came to this place in British Columbia and was like, oh, this is like really fun. Like, look at these people just doing what they want to do. And it had never occurred to me that you can just do what you want to do. Yeah, like it was honestly mind-blowing. And there was a whole city of them, of these people walking around doing what they want to do, like prioritizing the joy in their life, like skiing and running. And like I was like, oh my God, it really kind of blew my mind open. And then I came back to Edmonton where I was living, and I was like, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can do that. And maybe I can write and shoot the stories I'm writing. And then I realized like I don't want to sit in my desk and drive 10,000 kilometers to write a story. Why don't I live there? And so then I quit my job and I got a divorce and sold my house.
Plot twist, plot twist, plot twist.
I'm someone who likes to dive in. So I was like, goodbye, cruel world. I'm doing this. And it certainly wasn't easy, any of that stuff. But I had come to like a breaking point where I had to make a really big decision. And then I moved here. And then it was a couple of years. I worked as a cashier in a natural food store for a while. And then I ended up getting a job as a dietitian again, just because I got scared and I didn't believe in myself. And so then it was kind of, I ended up like, 5, 6 years, 7 years of doing that, as well as building this photography business in the meantime. Yeah.
Wow. Well, first of all, it seems like this town called to you.
It did.
Like it spoke to you. And I love hearing when inspired people inspire other people. And it just
Yes.
seemed really contagious for you that
Yeah.
you went back to Edmonton. You're like, I can't get this place out of my mind.
Yes.
I have to go back.
Yeah.
And you just had to make that hard choice. But it also seems like what I hear from your story, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Because even then you went to this town that was calling to you. What is the name of your city?
Nelson.
You went to Nelson, and then you're like, I'm going to do this thing. But then you kept on going back to the safe job of,
Yeah.
wait, this is a town where people do what they want and do what they love to do. Where I'm still going to play it safe. I'm at least in the town, but I'm going to play it safe. And I want to hear more stories like yours, Bobbi, because we always see just the highlight reel of like, look at Bobbi's thriving business. It's growing. She's coaching. She has a podcast. But then we have to like look back at like, okay, but it took her a little bit.
Been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a lot of like, oh God, like, yeah. And I thank you for saying that actually, because I really feel like in the last like 4 or 5 years, things have been going the way that I now want them to go. Like, I feel like I'm in charge of my choices. But 7 years of like struggling and like really struggling, and relationship issues, and like huge like shifts in who I am as a person, and like dealing with all my childhood crap, and all of that had to happen before I could start like living the life that I want to live. And yeah, that was like 7, 8, 10 years of hard work. So yes. It seems like I'm doing great, and this has not always been the case.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I how you're describing it, I'm seeing it like your heart and mind were filled with other things, like the things that make us, right? It's like our
Mhm.
childhood traumas, how we were raised, our life experiences. And not that those things ever leave us, but we somehow have to come to peace about them to make that space to
Yeah.
step into like the next season of Bobby, step
Yeah.
into like the next right thing. Which my question for you now is how yeah, was there an aha moment where you're like, okay, now this is the like life I'm living? Or did it take a while to even realize that you
Yeah, I
had
think
made
I
it?
had that realization, like, yesterday morning.
Perfect.
Because I don't think, um there's been definitely seasons where I'm like, "Hey, this is going good," or like, "Ooh, I did the thing that I wanted to do." Like, with the first year I hit six figures, I was like, "Ooh, ooh, hello." Um, but prior to that, I was doing 40 to 60, and then I had like, an 80 grand year where I was like, "Oh." Like, it just sort of seemed like a fluke. I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute. How did that happen?" I think that was, yeah, that I think that was probably an aha moment where I was like, "Oh, I have to actually look at this to figure out how I did that, and then maybe I can do that again." And then I was like, "Okay, 100K. I want 100K next year." As soon as I saw like 86 on my tax income thing, I was like, "Oh, like I didn't even know until I did my books that I had hit
Mm,
86." And I'm like, "Oh, oh, okay. Okay." So this is like it's within reach. Like I was baby stepping all the time, and like at 40 to 60 wasn't even on my radar. Like no way, totally impossible. Um, and I remember telling my nephew that I had made. He asked me how much I had made, and I was like, "Oh, 55K." And he's like, "Whoa, that's a lot." And then as I said it, I'm like, "No, it's not." Like, take out expenses, and that's like what, like 35 or something? Like, that's not very much. And then the next year I hit 86. And And then I'm like, "Okay, I have to this seems doable." And then that intentionality behind my
that
pricing
is
and my branding. Yeah.
which thank you for again, like we need more stories of this too, because you are not again my only like entrepreneurial friend of like, oh, so I'm a creative and I also need to pay attention to my
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes we just think like, oh, let's just like keep it in the closet. It should grow by itself, right? Like it should
Yeah.
fester and grow. Like, no, you kind of have to look at it. But what I really love, and I think will inspire our listeners too, is you looked at it and you weren't scared of it. You looked at it and it inspired you. You're like, oh, I'm going to look at it deeper to figure out, like, to reverse engineer what I did so that I can turn up the dial
Yeah.
and do it some more.
Yeah.
And I, just because Bobby and I have known each other for almost a year now and our
Mhm.
businesses, we know our businesses intimately. I know that you are surpassing that initial mark and you just keep going and you just
Yeah.
keep glowing, which I'm so glad that we can reflect and be like, oh, we're making it. This is happening, which we also have to realize again why I'm fangirling over Bobby. We can talk about numbers, but this is also numbers that represent lives that are impacted. Just because what you do with families and weddings is so powerful. You are helping people remember these really special moments, which I kind of have a branding question for you then, because
Sure.
here you are as a documentary photographer, you are photographing a bit what's there,
Mhm.
but I know that you are putting intention around your brand. So, what are the feelings of the
Mhm.
people you photograph? What are those feelings that you want them to have
Yeah.
anytime they interact with you?
Okay. I can tell you what they are, and then I can tell you why. And I think
Mm,
that's the bigger branding thing that we can dive into, if maybe we were gonna get there anyway, but I'm just putting that out there just so that we don't forget to, like, go into why. Um, so I want my clients to feel joy. And it seems weird. My light is doing something weird here. It seems weird to say, I want you to feel this, but that's what branding is, right? Is like we want our clients to feel something and therefore support us or buy our thing, right? Is that right? Praise?
well,
Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah. You're like, that's what it is.
You
Wait,
actually.
that's what it is, right? Well, keep going. I'm not going. What
Okay.
you're saying is not false.
Okay.
You're
Okay.
saying the right things. Yes.
Yeah. So I want them to feel joy and I want them to feel gratitude. And joy looks different for different people. At first, like when I first started like glomming onto it a little bit, the photos that I was recognizing that I enjoyed the most, for a year, the year I hit my first 100, my kind of tagline in my head when I was choosing what I was posting was open mouth smile. And because I really liked the images that were very expressive of um people just like really in it, you know? And when we're really in a moment, our mouths are wide open, our eyes are wide open, we are like throwing our heads back. We are like doing it, right? Like we're right there. And then when I got deeper into like, okay, what are my values? How do I want to experience my life? I'm like, oh, one of those things is joy. Like I really respond to joy. And it's not necessarily an open mouth smile. So how else do people experience joy? And that's just kind of a thing that is going through my head at all the time when I'm watching people. And then the gratitude is because we have so many hangups, and those things rob us of our joy. And I feel very strongly about this, that like, who is profiting from your self-loathing, right?
Mm,
There's companies and expectations and just people who are like robbing you of that joy. So I want people to feel gratitude when they look at these images and they're like, "Oh, look at what we have. Look at what we have." And those things are really hard to see when we have our own hangups. And so I really believe as photographers and even as other people who love someone, like when we look at the people we love, we don't see those hangups. We see them for who they are and we just fucking love them, right?
yes.
We don't see any of that stuff. But like we look at a photo of ourselves and we're like, oh, my nose is too big. Like it's bullshit, everybody. So I really want I hope that my photos will help people through an act of gratitude of like being able to see what it is they have and the people that are in their lives, that they will be able to embrace with joy, like how they are actually showing up, and shake off some of that shit that society has piled on them in an effort to like keep them down or make them buy stuff because they need to fill this hole of self-loathing with a product, you know?
Just gonna take a moment of silence, let some of that sit, because I feel like Bobby's just shedding some light on like our materialistic, like capitalistic
Yeah.
society of just like asking a question: who is profiting from this feeling? Like there was perhaps a brand out there who said, actually, we want people to feel like I want them to hate themselves. Or
Yeah.
it was like, honestly, like a sense of evil that wants us not to feel that joy.
Yeah.
And being able to step back and wait, like, yeah, who is this benefiting? It's not benefiting the people you love. Like, even from that external, like, you're going to flourish and your people around you are going to flourish when you're also joyful and content and
Yeah.
grateful too. And it's, yeah, I know we're getting really philosophical as photographers, but what a gift that that we're able to reflect this. And again, capture the human experience, but it's not only capturing the human experience, it's also seeing some of the downfalls of humanity and just being like, hey, we notice these things about ourselves. We're all in it. How
Hmm.
can we step back? And I love that you tied your key feelings also together. Like joy is so important to you personally. It's also important to your brand of what you want people to experience. And
Hmm.
because sometimes joy is lacking, you also want people to feel grateful, which will help affect their joy. And
Yes.
I love the full circle of that too. Which, okay, let's back up more. You're like, praise, I don't want you to forget to ask me why. How did you come to this? Like, these are the feelings. Why
Yeah.
is this important for joy and gratitude to be those key feelings that you want your brand to produce in the world?
Thank you for pulling those together. I don't know if I've consciously thought about it like that, but absolutely. I know that's what I described. But again, like having someone reflect something back to you makes it make sense. You're like, oh yeah, I am doing that. Or like, oh hey, I am beautiful. It's a nice little metaphor there for a photo. Nice
Mm.
story praise. So why? Because those are so I did a lot of hunting around I had never even like thought about what my values are. And then I had a coach and I did this exercise of like really figuring that out. And the main ones that came up for me were joy, connection, and adventure. And I had a bunch of others, but everything kind of like piled into those values. Like for adventure, I don't mean like climbing mountains necessarily. Sure, like that happens around here a lot. So that superficially connects with people, but adventure is also like curiosity and open-mindedness and a willingness to try. Um, and it also embodies connection because you're connecting with the earth, you're connecting with the people you're doing these adventures with, and we experience joy when we're having adventurous, mind-opening times together, right? So yeah, there is the through line between those. But those are things. So I did that work, and I found out that those are the things that I want to experience in my life. Those are the things that I gravitate towards. Those are the things I want to have, and I want because they mean so much to me. I think other people like would feel the same way. So my people also want that. But the reason that those became my brand didn't make a whole lot of sense to me until I like figured out why those values are so important to me. And this is the work that I do with my students is why? Why do you have those values? And then we dig into formative experiences that help us to realize where those values come from and why we seek that out in our art. And photographers often have a hard time calling themselves artists, but art is a form of self-expression. If you express yourself, you're an artist, which is everybody, right? We're all artists, but we just like to pigeonhole it to only certain people are artists. Like, no, I think we're all artists. We all need to express ourselves. So when I figured that out, the reason joy, connection, and adventure are so like intrinsic to who I am as a human and why I think I feel even called to share it now is because those are things I didn't have as a kid.
Mm.
And it
Again,
was, yeah, totally. So when I tapped into that, I was like, oh my God, like other people must feel like it helped me clarify so much why I was doing what I was doing that I really want to help people to be able to do that as well. And those might not be the things that work out for you, but if we look at our formative experiences in there somewhere is why you're doing this. And when you can figure out why you're doing this, that's your brand. Bam.
high five. We're ending it. Done. She did it. She crushed it. Teaching everyone. Yes, please. Which we're gonna dive more into Storyteller School because it sounds like part like learning how to do documentary photography slash a little bit of therapy, which I love. I love, but that
Yeah.
is really eye opening. Yes, because right. Oftentimes we either go the direct opposite of how we were raised or we want to mirror it, right? Like
Yeah.
because there was something lacking. And thank you for so vulnerably sharing that because oftentimes as adults we have to parent ourselves still or parent our inner child or the
Mhm.
things that we lost. And it
Yeah.
seems like which is also something so magical in that the opportunity that your business has presented to you has given you that chance to become a whole Bobby, a
Yeah.
more full Bobby. And again, like the ripple effect, the fact that you photograph families with
Mhm.
this why, with these values, is how important it is for them to embrace, like, you are providing this for your kids right now and how special
Yeah.
that is. Which, can I just ask you, as someone who, like, I cry sometimes when I'm photographing people and like I like try to keep professional, but how
Yeah.
do you navigate some of these emotions as a documentary photographer when you
Um,
see things that are like happening in front of you
Yeah.
that maybe you didn't have as a child?
Yeah.
This is not on the script, people. This is me asking Bobby very like, so
I
tell me
like going
more.
off script. off-road.
Yes.
Um, so I think part of part of the reason that I picked up a camera and why I wrote, but a a camera allows me to capture something and not have to feel it. I can feel it later when I'm safe. You know, it allows me to like when I recognized that this was kind of that photography was therapeutic for me. I also noticed that it was giving me an opportunity to experience something and not have to be part of it because that was just too much. It was just like I didn't have the emotional maturity to like be there uh in the moment, but I could experience it later, which doesn't affect how I photograph, I don't think. Well, maybe I'll dig into that in the next phase, I mean my next era. But like um that is what I really it allowed me to like be open to them without being vulnerable. And then later when I'm looking at them, it's so funny, Praise, when I am shooting and then I'm looking at things in Lightroom, I can hear the conversations that they're having. Like my brain is healing now. Like it's getting to the point where I can experience the stuff while I'm shooting it. And I'm much more open. And yes, I definitely cry when I'm like I get tears in my eyes. And if parents are crying, I'm like definitely that happens now, but it never used to. Like I don't think it's really only happening now that I'm at another like phase in my life or in my healing. Which is another phase in my life. And so yeah, so that like separateness for a long time allowed me, I think the universe was like, hey, like you can do this, like you can be part of this. And so it allowed me to like feel like I could witness that. And then now I can feel it with them. Now I'm in a place where I can like unabashedly cry at weddings or
Mm.
like especially like the thing that something that really super gets me is when kids are really close to their grandparents. I never had grandparents. So that really gets me when they're just like soaking it in with them and like holding their hands and like talking really close to their faces um and the grandparents aren't necessarily making any sense and the kids are just like right in there with it. Like that's so special. Like it's so special and it to be able to like see that at a wedding or at a reunion or um like even if you're close enough to like to be able to like live with your grandparents and stuff, that that gets me. And there's often like our society is so mean to our old people, like oh they're just this, they're just that, but they have so many like oh god, like let's just listen to them for a bit, you know, let's just hang out with
Mm.
them. But
Yeah. Um,
yeah,
I'm
don't put
just,
baby in a
trying
corner.
to stay composed, but also, I have to give myself permission. And any guest on this on this podcast, we can always cry if we need to on this podcast. But just how you paint that, which first, the body and mind are so smart in that it's doing what it did best to keep you protected, right? Like
Yeah,
it knew your brain had to heal to a certain point, and that what's amazing is that your camera was your safety. It was like the blanket that you were kind of carrying around too.
totally.
Not that you could disassociate necessarily, but you could put things in a box until you were at a safe place to process things later.
Yeah.
And first, we have to acknowledge for people who are hiring photographers, like hire humans who are have that ability to feel, because like what a service your clients did for you and allowing to trust you and bring them into your family so that you could also witness this and see it with your like talented artistic eye. But what a gift
Mhm.
it was for you to witness and process this as well, which is something
Yeah.
so beautiful and so wonderful. And
Mhm. It
yeah.
feels very reciprocal. I think that
Mm.
was that was at a point where like that's where okay, so I make my first 100K and well that was easy and boring.
Mm.
What like I did some like I just raised my prices and then I picked up a bunch of clients that I didn't really align with, and then the next year I was like no. no, I am just doing this for me because now I know it's possible to do that. Now let's see if I can do it the way I want to. Um, but what I realized in that year and every interaction since is the more that I am opening up myself to my clients, the more it feels like this giving, caring, reciprocal relationship. Like the more I can be vulnerable with them, the more they're going to be vulnerable with me. If I'm
Mm.
this kind of superficial photographer, like in my past, I would be very like thinking, okay, I'm going to get the Milky Way, but like very technical about stuff. But I just realized for me that was just a distraction. It was just stopping me
Mm.
from doing what I really actually do want to do, which is like hold their hands with my camera and like cry. Or like is it called cute aggression when you like want to eat the thing that you love?
Yes. So what's the English language is so limited, but there's
Yeah.
a word in Tagalog that
Uh-huh.
that kind of encapsulates that. And in a few Asian cultures, they have that word where you're just like,
Yeah.
I could eat you because I love you so much.
Want to consume you. Those are the
Yes.
feelings. I never felt those before. And
Mm.
now that I'm like opening up to that, because I can see, I can not, and I don't just see it anymore. I can feel much more empathetic. I guess I'm just much more
Mm.
openly empathetic to everything that my clients are experiencing, and that makes their photos better. You know?
100%. Which, okay, I want to ask you because this is something that was such a part of your journey, and it seems like it took a few evolutions and years, but you have this amazing program called the Storyteller School, which I want you to just unashamedly brag about because I
Okay.
know it's amazing.
Mhm.
But yeah, tell us a little bit about what you teach. You don't have to tell us everything, but
Yeah.
how do you teach people to kind of like fast forward all these things that you learned to
Yeah.
get to this point of like empathy and noticing and yeah,
Yeah.
telling these stories that really matter?
Well, for me, it was like this lifelong journey of just kind of stumbling across this stuff, you know? I think the universe in many times tried to be a lot more direct, but I was like, no,
Ignore. Come back
not,
later.
not ready for that. But now that I've done it and now that I so deeply believe in it, I can see where people are at. And like as a dietitian, I also did tons of took a bunch of therapeutic training and certifications and stuff. So I have like a therapeutic lens. It's not therapy, folks, but we have to be able to dig into some stuff that we had no idea would impact photography or how you see the world. So the first like month, we dive right in, and some quotes from my students is like, I didn't know we were going to dive in this fast. But it's very safe. It's almost like just a little bit like of a joke between us. We're like, okay, we're really going in, we're doing this. But so for the first month, we're talking about values, we're talking about our personal stories, we're talking about how we kind of have in the past photographed things, and then I help them to see like you have had this vision for some time. It's just we have to develop the technical chops to be able to like actually pull it out so that you can more consistently do this. So we dive into that, and then we talk a lot about your gift. So I have this theory that we come into the world with a very specific gift. Our tribulations help us to form it, and
Mm.
then in our later years, our task is to give it away. And so we go through a lot of the stuff that they have maybe not processed or they are processing, to look at it from the perspective of yes, and there's something that you have that your clients need, and that is sometimes really hard for people. They're like, this is just photography, and I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. And if it's not, then I'm not the person for them, right?
Mhm.
Like, and that becomes really clear. And I hope that is very clear in my advertising and stuff, is that, or my marketing, is that like this is for folks who have this need that they want to tell stories, right? And so
Mm.
we get into why you have that need. That's the first, like, we do that throughout the course, but that is definitely the first month. Second month, then we're working on, okay, storytelling. What's our message? How does this play into our brand? We write a brand bio based on our values. Like, we're not just like esoterically like considering these things. We actually like constructively put it into things that they would use in their marketing and on their website and in their social media and stuff. And then we revise or build new websites based on all of this work that we've done. So now that we have this clear like vision of who we are, how we show up in the world, how our work is actually different, then we present it in this is how you do it. And that ties in SEO, it ties in all of that stuff, but it happens really naturally because now everything makes sense. Like when we understand what our perspective is and what our voice is, like when we intentionally understand that, everything becomes so much easier, you know?
1,000%, because we need more businesses that are run by leaders who are aligned with who they are and what their values are. There are so many people who don't have that self-awareness, who haven't taken the time, who haven't invested in themselves to really understand that. Because as service providers, it's very hard to serve other people wholeheartedly if you haven't even taken that time to do that service for yourself. And
Yeah.
it seems like you take people through this really natural journey to be able to get there. And I love that you are putting an emphasis. You're helping them a lot with their business, right? Like this is going to result in more eyes on what you do, more revenue, more great clients. But that's way later. It's
Yeah.
coming back to these basics of what is that gift?
Yeah.
It's been formed in you. Now it's time to give it to
Yeah.
others too, which I think, Bobbi, is so beautiful. And I will also say, to reflect back to you, really exudes your values of joy, connection, and adventure. Like through
Yes.
Storyteller School, you're living out your values. So you're like, hello, this is so meta. Like you are teaching without even
Yes.
teaching, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't even have to say it, but you are living it out, which I think is something
Oh, thanks,
so
praise.
beautiful and like
Yeah.
so wonderful. And so it's a lot of feelings. Again, we have permission to feel this way. As people want to learn from this wise sage that is Bobbi, how can people get connected to you? How can people support you and learn more about what you do?
I have 3 Instagram accounts.
Perfect.
So
List them, spell them.
Barbarich photo, documentary family photo, because I want it to be very clear. And then my podcast is Tilt and Shift Podcast. Those are all on Instagram. My website is bobbiebeducation.com. And my website is bobbibarbarich.ca. There was something that I was going to say, but it'll come to me hopefully in a few seconds.
Well, okay. Closing question of
Sure.
we are rounding out 2023 or going into 2024. I know it's like very trendy for people to have like a word for the year, which is kind of it's branding. We're branding the year of 2024
Yeah.
for Bobbi. Do you have an inkling or
Oh,
intuition of
wow.
what you want your next year to be?
Expansion. Yeah. That just came to me. I'm going to write that down.
Where's my post-its? We need this. We need to write it
Yes,
down.
all my post-its are right here.
Expansion.
Yeah. Yeah. So this year has been particularly big and also really meta because now that I'm regularly coaching people through this process, it reinforces my own why and what I'm doing and how I do it. Right. So it's so, fortuitous, or what's the right word? It's so reciprocal with my students. Like, sure, I'm guiding you through this, but like you're emboldening me and like empowering me to continue empowering others to be able to do this, like it just has this exponential effect or whatever. But yeah, expansion came to me, I think, because the last 2 years have really showed me what's possible and what I'm capable of and where my path is going and like where I'm choosing to take my path, maybe is more accurate. But yeah, expansion in all of those areas where like this feels great, but I bet we can make it even greater,
Yeah, expansion is exponential. right? Like
Yeah.
it just kind of keeps on going. Once you get to
Yeah.
this point, now you've
How
grown out of that fish tank already.
Yeah.
Go to the
Yeah,
next
like, how
one.
can we help other people do this? How can we
Mm,
what other areas can we move into? Because this is yeah, it makes all the difference, man.
oh, this was so good, Bobby. Thank you so much for holding space with me, for doing a mini therapy session with me on this podcast. And also, I feel as if you're going to be a real inspiration to people, again, of just how those people in Nelson inspired you in the past to live a life
Mhm.
of doing something you really love. I feel like people hearing your story will feel the same way too, of just really leaning into the thing, even if it's 2 steps forward, maybe 1 step back. It's like this self discovery that's super important. Again, it's
Yeah.
you were forming your gift and now
Yes.
you're sharing it. And now people can follow you on all 3 of your Instagram accounts so we can witness the continual expansion. So thank you so much, Bobby.
Oh, praise, thank you.